Imagine being able to witness events from the past, the present, and even the future. This is Robert Manni, host of Guys TV, and this week my special guest is Sebastien Martin, remote viewer. It all starts right here, right now on Guys TV. You can also catch me on KCAA Radio here in Southern California, Guys Radio, my worldwide podcast, and we're on UK Health Radio all weekend long. Guys TV, Guys Radio, thanks for your support. Okay, Guys Radio, it is the interview portion of our show, and I'm delighted to introduce a new guest to Guys Radio, Sebastien Martin. He's a Canadian serial entrepreneur born in France. He's built an international health foods company, a lot of it based around Manuka honey, for almost 2 decades, offices in the US, Canada, UK, New Zealand. In November of 2011, Sebastien had a close encounter of the fifth kind, and they're all different kinds of close encounters. And we'll talk about that today, but with a stellar being living in a fifth dimension reality. And he has had communications with him and the rest of his star family ever since, receiving frequent and powerful downloads, all aimed to raise consciousness. This type of disturbing experience forced Sebastien to resort to the services of hypnotherapy to help him with some of the issues arising from what could be obviously a life-changing encounter, and as well as the prophetic visions he's had since he's a kid. Now, he's been on Cosmic Disclosure. He is a remote viewer. He is familiar with the Galactic Alliance and agenda. He's an ET contactee. He knows all about split souls, human consciousness, and much, much more. And his most recent visits involved 11th dimensional beings, reinforced his belief and clarified it in terms of parallel timelines. He's even met with archangels. And he gets powerful downloads every day after his Kundalini awakening experience and his first encounter. And this enhances psychic abilities. And he works in the field of remote viewing, and he does work for a lot of different organizations, a lot of different, the alphabet organizations. He has, I'm sure, a high security clearance. He's connected somehow to the secret space program, Stargates, and the alien agenda. His book is called The Inner Journey in Outer Space. I read it over the past few days. It's fantastic. It's my delight and honor to welcome Sebastien Martin to Guys Radio for the first time. Welcome, Sebastien.
Well, thank you, Robert, for having me. It was a great introduction. Thank you so much.
Well, I got to tell you, you have an incredible life story. I mean, so many different things. You were a regular kid in many ways, but you had extraordinary experiences and a very tough birth. So tell us about how you got into the whole metaphysical area, starting from the very beginning. What happened when you were a child? You had Meniere's disease, you had family issues, you had astral travel issues, you learned about the silver cord, you had your accident, you had bilocation issues. Tell everybody a little bit about who are you and what you're all about.
Wow. If I have to sum up my book, it's complicated in 40 minutes. But I have to say that when I was growing up, I had those events, here and there. I had an unusual childhood in the extent that when I was born, I was missing the first layer of my epidermis. So I was born raw, like my skin was red, and I was in pain. I was screaming every day for 6 months of my life, and doctors could not figure out what was wrong with me. And I've seen many doctors in Europe, and they had no clue. So they kind of tagged me with a natural disease that was called Lener Mussus. And that disease is a very rare genetic disorder that affects, hundreds of thousands of kids, around the world. But specifically, those children who are affected by this disease will end up to be 5 feet tall and very skinny and have lots of health issues associated with it. That was on my case. After 6 months, my skin started to grow, and I became like a normal child, per se. Even if I had some respiratory issues at the beginning, my parents sent me off to the Pyrenees Mountains to heal, and I was away from them for 6 months of my life, and then I came back, and I never had asthma ever since. So I have to say that growing up, I didn't feel any different than anybody else. I was living in an older home, so I was always subjected to see spirits in that house all the time, but I never really mentioned it to my family. I was just observing those silhouettes passing through the house.
Mhm.
It never really truly scared me when I was in the living room, for example, watching TV. I just knew that if I just stay where I was, those spirits would not disturb me, and so I was not going to meet with them to venture in their space. I was staying away, but I was living with it. It was kind of an odd thing, but that's what I was used to. And as I was growing up, again, I became older. I remember having those deja vu's experiences where I was like looking outside and I saw, oh, I already lived that experience before. That could be explained scientifically, obviously, like with your eyelids just like flapping a few times like too fast, and then you just think that you already lived that experience. So I don't know. But when my life truly changed is when I went off to a boarding school when I was about 14 years old. And then I started to have those very vivid dreams. And I experienced my first out of body experiences at that point. And so I could literally see my hands and like I was in full control of my body. So having the full blown astral experience and seeing my silver cord go into space and being fully aware of that experience and that connection. And I knew that if I wanted to go back into my physical body, it would be like in a fraction of a second I'd be back in my body. So I felt safe. And I remember at the time I used to talk to this nurse we was at school because I used to have like pounding headaches. I used to have lots of physical effects from those experiences as well. And so as I was seeing that nurse at school, I had like nosebleeds as well and everything else. And so I was asking her, so well, do you know if if I'm going out of my body? And that nurse was quite something, I have to say. She had two different eye colors. So I thought that she was very unique in that aspect, like
Mhm.
David Bowie.
Right.
And she was fully aware of travel, astral travel, and out of body experiences. She was really into it. And then so when I told her that I went into space and I felt excited about discovering other planets and these sort of things, and she was warning me, saying you have to be careful because if you venture too far out, and then there's a dark spirit, for example, that could just cut off your silver cord, then you'll be disconnected from your body and you might turn insane or something will really bad happen to you. I wasn't aware of that. I was unaware of any kind of protections and anything to do with my own safety as at the time. And I just carried on my life as usual. I didn't really have those experiences again, like often, but you know, flying in my dreams was a common fact for me. Like I always used to
Mhm.
remember those things. And then when it truly changed for me was when I actually liked a girl in that school, and I wanted to impress her, and I really don't know why. And this is the um, I guess the big question is as to how did I know? I was doing transcendental meditation. My mom introduced me to it when I was very young, like 8 years old or something. And so I was practicing transcendental meditation, usually sitting down, repeating my mantras, and doing that pretty much daily. And so for me to use transcendental meditation in a different manner was very unusual to me. So when I liked that girl and I said, let's do an experiment. And again, I have no idea how, why I even thought of this. I said, how about you place an object on your nightstand tonight? Because she was in a border as well, like me. And so I said, put an object on your nightstand, and tomorrow morning I will tell you what it is. Just trying to, a way for me trying to impress her, which was kind of dumb actually. And then I went back into my own bedroom, and then I decided to lie down and use transcendental meditation techniques lying down and starting with my mantra. And all of a sudden, I could see myself very quickly my eyes were closed and I could see myself going in a tunnel, like a dark tunnel,
Mhm.
going very fast. And then I was hovering with my, so this is when I've used my third eye for the first time, really, was I was hovering over this nightstand looking at three objects. And so I was able to describe those objects. They were in full color, they were very clear to me. I couldn't see anything else. And as soon as I saw those objects, I just remember going back through that tunnel and waking up and opening up my eyes. And I was like in a panic because I could no longer move. I was in sweats, I was
Mhm.
out of breath, and I could not get out of my bed. And that panicked me. And I always promised myself that I would never do that again. But I was very happy because I was able to achieve what I was planning to do.
Mhm.
So the next day, I went to see that girl and I said, look, I saw three objects. You tried to trick me. And it was not just one. And she turned blank, like she was white as a ghost. And she would not discuss that ever again for another few years. When I, as an adult, I reached out to her, we're still in touch as friends. And then I asked her, I said, why were you so scared? And she said to me, well, because one of the objects that you described was a pendant that my dad gave me before he passed away in a car crash. And I never wore it at school. So I knew that you saw something real. And the way you described it scared me because she was a devout Catholic. And so that was basically something that really spooked her. And it was a topic that she didn't want to, talk about because to her it was maybe like satanic or something of the something she could not understand, basically. And but I was able to describe these other two objects, and she was able many years later to tell me that I was right.
Okay.
I never had that confirmations then when I was doing it with her. So a few years went by, and then when I was about 16 years old, still in the same school, I was in a class, Spanish class, and it was there was we had 2 hours of Spanish class. So I was we're in during the break after the first hour, and then during that break, I had a vision. I saw one of my classmates being hit by a car, outside school. So I knew exactly the location. That was my first, I would say, vision or prophetic vision that I had, and that spooked me, but at the same time I didn't know what to do with it because it was so new and I felt like I had to warn her. So I wrote it down on a piece of paper, put it into her pen case, and then after the break she went back into the class and she opened up a pen case. She saw the note and then she said, like, who did this? So it was just before the second hour of the Spanish class started. So
Mhm.
she was like yelling in the classroom saying, who did this? It's
Mhm.
not funny.
Wow.
And so I said, it's me. And so she wasn't happy with me. And then she
Of
had all
course.
of her friends with her, and they were like looking at me with like dirty looks and
Mhm.
these sort of things. And, these kind of went away, and then the year later, so basically we were in the same class year after year. And then the next year, she didn't show up. And so I asked her friends, I said, what happened? And Rachel was her name. And this, she said, well, she had an accident, um, and the accident was actually caused by the Spanish teacher that in the class I was in. So he was the one who hit her on a scooter, and I saw her dead in my vision. But she didn't die. She became
Okay.
paraplegic, and so she was in a wheelchair for the rest of her life.
Oh my
And that's
goodness.
basically what
Wow.
happened. But that was kind of shocking, and that's when I realized that the visions became real. But at the same time, her friends looked at me like I was a weirdo,
Of
or they
course.
was like spooked by me because of what I was able to see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sebastien Martin, amazing story. My special guest on this week's Guys Radio. So you were remote viewing and you mentioned TM. I also practice TM and I
Okay.
did it this morning before our conversation. And what I noticed was over time, I started to clear out. Felt that I've been remote viewing while in TM, where I go to places. I just let it happen. And I don't know if this is part of TM or not, but I've gone to places and I'm literally there and it's usually in the past, and I have to kind of witness situations, and they kind of dissolves them and dissolves any blockages or anything like that. So that's kind of, I guess, a natural form of remote viewing. I also took some classes with Laurie Williams, who's a protege of Lynn Buchanan, and it's all mathematical with the symbols and all of that. Did you ever take any formal courses for your remote viewing, or has it all
Never,
been kind of
never.
organic for you?
It's been very organic. In fact, I didn't know what I was doing at the time was remote viewing. When I was asked by, so now we have to go move a bit forward.
Please.
When I started becoming vocal about my experiences, so I had like an ET encounter and I had past life regressions and all of that, and I was discussing all of these experiences on the radio. And so at the time, I was still part of that business that I've started as the
Mm-hmm.
founder. I was CEO and became chairman for 2 years, and then I had to resign from my chairman of the board's position in order to do my interviews because it would have been potentially conflicting with the other members of the organization. So I was okay with that, and then I started talking about my experiences. I felt like I had to convey my message and share it with as many people as possible at the time. And I was having those visions, very vivid visions, which they were very scary to me at the time. I was like seeing earthquakes and tsunamis and cataclysms of all sorts and plane crashes, you name it. And I was living those experiences as a first person. I was always
Mm-hmm.
embodying someone else. I was not myself per se. I was living in the body of someone else.
Any positive things? Or just it sounds like a
Um,
lot of these things are like
well,
natural
yeah.
disasters and things
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
yes, of course. I saw my son, my daughter, like in the
Mm-hmm.
future as well. So I had some very positive visions. In fact, I knew the sex of my children before they were born. Like I already knew where they were going to be and how they were going to look like. So that was very comforting to my wife at the time. Was pregnant and it was something she was happy to hear because it was not negative, but she had witnessed as well my other visions which were pretty dramatic, and so that she didn't know what to do with it at the time, and I didn't know what to do with it at the time because I was panicked and I was stressed out by it. So because they were becoming so frequent, I had to resort to see an hypnotherapist, a clinical hypnotherapist, to deal with my visions. And my sole goal was to try to get rid of them. And so when I start becoming vocal about all of what I've learned from those sessions, I attracted the attention of some alphabet agencies who basically followed me on my Facebook page, but without interacting with me.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason being is because I mentioned one event, one of those visions, which again was through the eyes of someone else. I was looking at a man in a car through a scope. I was on a rooftop and I could clearly see the man opening up his window. And then that's when I saw his face. And right away, like when I saw that, the vision stopped. And what I heard, so when you are like, let's say, clairvoyant and you see something from the past or the future, you can see things. I saw everything I see is through like a mini movie, always. It's never like a still image. It's always a mini movie. But I'm also hearing. So I'm a clairvoyant and clairaudient. So I can hear, and when I hear, it's usually very specific keywords or words or sentences that are to do with that, event. And at that moment, I heard Prime Minister assassinated.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very curious because I did not recognize the man I was seeing on my vision. So I went on Google Images, and that's when I searched Prime Minister assassinated, and that's when I saw Rafik Hariri's face. Who was the Prime Minister of Lebanon many years ago, and he was killed in a car in Lebanon. And I had no idea why I was seeing this because this event occurred 7 years prior, so he died 7 years ago when I had that vision. So it made no sense to me as to why I was seeing it. But the details that I was describing on the radio shows were not known to the press. And therefore, that's the reason why those alphabet agencies were curious to put me as a person of interest because
Of course.
I knew something that no one else knew, so they were curious to know who I was, and so they were basically just following
Okay.
me around. So it started off with Facebook, and I even had I don't think I even wrote it in my book, but I had some vans. I don't know if I wrote it or not. I forgot now.
No.
But I had a white van coming onto my property as well, and I had a vision of that too. So that same night, I clearly saw the van coming onto my property at the time. I was sleeping, but I could see there was snow outside, and I was so curious that I had to go outside and look at the road. And there's a specific road on my property, at a commercial property, that was very steep. And in the wintertime, we were not using it because it was too steep, and cars and trucks would just like, get caught in the ice maybe and have an accident. So we never use it in the winter. But that day, there were tracks on the road, like truck tracks, and
Mhm.
they were very clearly defined and they were in and out. And I don't know again what happened, who came over to see me, but the vision I had, which was an interesting one, I was traveling through the corridor of my house. So I was in bed and I could clearly see, remember, like going in the middle of the night, traveling through, and the van was parked right outside my house. I had a glass door for my entryway, and I could see two men, two occupants in that van. And the man got spooked because somehow he saw me. I don't know exactly what happened. I don't believe they were regular men. I do believe they were probably men in black. And the clear indication I had from them that they were hybrids themselves.
Mhm.
So I recognized that from them. They
So
were not normal human beings.
by hybrid, just for our audience, you mean what?
They were like a mix of human being and ET
Okay.
origin. So they were manipulated to be special, like different than regular human beings. They look somewhat human, but they're not quite human. So they can
Okay.
drive vans. They could fool anybody walking on the streets to be like normal people, but
Okay.
they're not standard human beings.
Okay. Sebastien, let me ask you about remote viewing, just for our audience, those who aren't familiar with it. So remote viewing is you can they kind of a perfect example would be I think the remote viewer located Saddam Hussein and found that he was
Yes.
like hiding in a hole someplace, and that's how they found him. So it's a practice of seeing things, whether it's in the past or the future or the present,
Mhm.
where you can use a formula, or you may or have an organic gift like yourself, where you can actually see other places. Talk to us
Yes.
a little bit about how that works. And do you look at things in the past? Because I know you've had these visions of the past, or is it more
Mhm.
in the future? How is your skill deployed?
Yeah.
And how does it, do you ever see other people? If you go someplace, can you find other remote viewers already there? And can they see you? And do you have to kind of like peel off and leave? How does that all work?
Yes, so I'm kind of chuckling at that because I had an experience like this, but it was not with a human being. However, the remote viewing I've experienced, again, I didn't know what was remote viewing when I first experienced it.
Mhm.
When I was remote viewing, this agent was following me on Facebook. I connected to that person and was able to save her life because her life was in danger. And she was in Iraq at the time. And I said, "Your life is in danger." And I described what was going on. And so, based on that event, that was already remote viewing. It was not just a regular vision. I was, seeing the event through her eyes. And that's usually what I do when I remote view.
What inside of
Um,
that? What inside of that, Sebastian? How did you like click onto that? Was
I
it Did
just
she ask you, or you just knew that something
no,
was happening? Okay.
I just knew intuitively that this was out of the thousands of people I had on Facebook at the time. When I first did my interviews, I was not selecting anybody. I was just like randomly accepting any request that was coming in through my Facebook. So I
Mhm.
was not selective, and I didn't know most of the people that were going onto my Facebook. But somehow I just knew out of the thousands of people I had on Facebook that this was the person I had the visions of.
Mhm.
So I reached out to her by messenger and I said, your life is in danger. I know what you do and you need to get out. And so she got out, but she didn't reach out to me for another 4 weeks. And then at the time she was in Jordan, and she sent me a picture of a man I described as part of my vision of people walking through the crowd. And those three men, one of them was working for the Iraqi government, and her
Hmm.
safe house
Right.
was actually seen by those guys. They knew that they were actually aiming to,
Hmm.
arrest her basically, but she was able to escape and leave the country without problems. And so she was the one who trained me to become a remote viewer
Got it.
by testing me through newspaper articles. And she was explaining to me, I said, what you are doing is remote viewing. And she never tried to give me a protocol or anything else like that. She
Hmm.
just like sent me random newspaper articles. And she asked me to read the articles, which were foreign to me. They were all in English, and I had to tell her what I picked up from those articles. And as I was reading those articles, I was able to know the truth about those people.
Hmm.
So, for example, there were two women who passed away. They apparently committed suicide, jumping off a building in Jordan, and then they died. And the article just explained that they committed joint suicide, and I knew it was not suicide. I think they got pushed, and I saw two soldiers in that vision. One left from the back of that building in construction, and the other one left from the front. And the response I got from that agent was, "Well, we that's interesting. We knew of one soldier, not two." So she was validating my remote viewing
Amazing.
experiences
Hmm.
when I was doing it live. So for me, when I was seeing something, I knew this was in the past. But when I do remote viewing, I don't have to concentrate to be isolated. I could just be cooking my eggs in the kitchen and having a full-blown vision if I'm asked
Okay.
to do something. It comes
Well,
organically.
so if I asked you, okay, what am I going to be doing 3 years from now? You could lock into that?
Potentially, but not like this. It doesn't work
Okay.
that way.
Okay.
For me, like I had a direct connection to that
Hmm.
agent,
Hmm.
and we've been working together for almost a decade now.
Okay.
So it's been ongoing, and I was always very good at seeing events through her or connected to her for whatever she was involved in. Like I saved her life three times. It doesn't mean that I can do this for everybody else that
Right.
I don't know randomly.
Okay.
I need to have like a point of connection, and I do this with friends, for example, where my friends would reach out to me and say, "Look, I have this friend in Mexico, for example, who has a daughter, and then they're having major conflicts with each other." And so he gave me two pictures, one of the mother and one of the daughter. And but just by looking at the pictures, I was able to read the energy
Hmm.
and knew exactly what was the conflict and how to solve it.
Got it. Wow.
So
You're
yeah,
like
that's
you're like multidimensional, and the story. Forgive me for interrupting, but the story gets even bigger than this because not only that, you have been visited by kind of your star seed family, intergalactic 11th dimensional beings who came and told you why you're here and why you're doing what you're doing and what your mission is. I want to get
mhm.
to that. And you've met with archangels, but let's start with your star seed family. What happened
Okay.
there?
So that came on November 2011 when I had a regular night dream, waking up, remembering this being who basically looked like a human being but with bigger eyes, higher cheekbones, and he was very happy to see me. He had this unusual bright smile that was forced. It was not so much forced, but you could see it was not natural. Like he was trying his
Mhm.
best to look natural, but he was not. It was not a natural smile, and that kind of shocked me because I knew that being was not human based on the eyes and everything else, and so it kind of stayed with me. That vision stayed with me for the whole day. And that day it was a day off, so my employees were away, but I went to the office to catch up with some work. So I went into my office, and then through the window of my office, I could still see that being, basically still in my field of vision. And it was with me for the whole day, and I didn't know why. Like usually when you dream of something, you just like shake it off and then it's gone. But this being stayed with me for the whole day, entire day. So when it was time to go for dinner, went back home, and after dinner, I said to my wife, I said, "Look, I'm just going to stay on the sofa, and I need to just like rest and by myself." And So she went to bed with our daughter at the time, and I basically stayed on the sofa, poured myself a chamomile tea, which was sipping on the counter in the kitchen, and I started to close my eyes, and I was like meditating. I was trying to understand what was happening to me, and as I did that, within a few seconds, I could still feel this whirlwind of energy, like going all around me, and I could feel it. It was a very, very intense energy. And then I could not understand what it was. It was unique. And when the energy stopped, I opened my eyes and I could see that being standing up right in front of me. The same being that appeared in my dreams in the morning. But he was physically standing up right in front of me, in front of my library. I had like a few shelves next to the TV, and he was covering the whole thing. He was there physically. He appeared physical to me, but he was not. He was an hologram.
Mhm.
And it took me years to realize that actually. But when I first saw him, my first body response was trying to stand up and fight him because I was there to protect my family. I wasn't thinking
How
rationally.
tall was he?
He wasn't that tall. I would say probably the same height as me, maybe a bit
Okay.
taller, like 6'3", maybe.
Okay.
And when I saw him, my first reaction was trying to get up, and I couldn't move. I was frozen, and it kind of made me panic a bit because I wanted to react, but I couldn't speak either because my first thought was, "What are you doing in my house?" And these sort of things. I could not speak. I could only think it.
Mhm.
And as I was thinking all of this, he was still looking at me with the same unusual bright smile that he had in my vision, and he never changed, never phased from that look, always stayed the same. And he basically told me telepathically that his name was Zor, Z or Z O A R, from the Galactic Alliance, and that I had no fear to have, that he was not there to hurt me or harm me. Um, and again, we felt like we had a conversation, and at the time, I remember having those questions to do with cataclysms and
Mhm.
these sort of things, right? Because it was still ongoing for me. I was
Sure.
still in that mode, and I was waiting for my appointment with a clinical hypnotherapist. So for me, it was everything was happening at the same time. And my first questions to him was about the cataclysms, and he said, "Oh yeah, yeah, these will happen, and lots of people will die, but that's no big deal. Like we live forever anyway. Like our soul live on." And he was not phased by it, but that panicked me because
Sure.
for me it was so new, and I was not really familiar with ETs, and I knew nothing of this world. This was not my thing. I was a businessman. I was there
Mhm.
to make money, and that's what I
Right.
cared about.
Mhm.
That was my life. So for me, when I had that experience, I didn't know how long the conversation went, and I don't fully remember what we discussed because I had a blank. All I remember was him leaving, and he phased out, like his whole body phased out.
He stuck with you though, right? And you met
He
him
had
and some of his
no no
friends, right?
no. He had a blue glow of energy around him, and
Okay.
then he went away. He vanished. He was not with his friends. Like he was not.
But you've seen him
Um,
again now since then.
I have seen him again,
Okay.
yes, but that was out later, like years after that.
Okay.
But this time around, when I saw him and he vanished, I just stood up and I thought I lost my mind because I really thought I turned crazy. And I was walking back to the kitchen to grab my cup of tea, and I was still, looking down the floor, still thinking about what just happened. I was shocked. And so I grabbed the tea, put it to my lips, and then I saw it was freezing cold. And then I looked at the clock on the stove, and I had 2 hours of missing time.
Mhm.
And I didn't think that so much time went through or went
Mhm.
by. So I
Excuse
was
me, 1 second.
sorry.
Sorry, I dropped something. Okay, it's all right.
So I was shocked, and I was wondering what happened. Like I don't remember a thing. I only remember some of it, but not all of it. And so that was my experience with Zoe. And I didn't know who he was. I didn't know where he came from. I came to realize down the line that he was a Pleiadian, that my star family, I call it my star family because when I did the sessions with the hypnotherapist, I was able to revisit my abductions. And so when I was with the hypnotherapist, I didn't know, I really didn't know I was abducted or a contactee of any kind, because for me, it never crossed my mind. Even when I was at
Mhm.
school, when I was 16 years old, and I was writing pages and pages of this alien language. I was obsessed with it. And I was writing from top to bottom, left to right. And I was writing almost like not hieroglyphs, but almost like Chinese, signs, like basically
Mhm.
like pages on end. I had like notebooks of it. And I didn't know, I was obsessed. I was just writing and writing and writing that language that I couldn't understand. But I never questioned it at the time,
Mhm. So what did they
you
tell
know?
you your mission was?
So when I was regressed and I saw my star family through a regression, they told me that all I was supposed to be doing was living my life and die. So just to feel and have all the human emotions that we normally have, and they were learning from that. And I couldn't understand why, because to me, like, they probably had emotions like human beings did, but I wasn't really questioning it. But that's what they told me. And my stepfather basically said to me, says, since you're now awake, your mission is to awaken the star seeds of his planet. He did not tell me how, he didn't try to give me a manual and tell me exactly what to do. So from that experience, I thought, well, maybe I should just do interviews and share my information with people. And maybe I was pushed as well by lots of friends to write a book
Mhm.
and to share my experiences with them, and that's what I did. But apart from that, I had other friends telling me, "Oh, you should start a center and start teaching people." I never really thought of that because to me, that was enough, and I didn't really see myself as a guru or like a leader of any kind or spiritual leader. I certainly didn't want to have this cult of personality, so I stay away from all of that. I just say, "Oh, my bit was to share my experiences on radio shows, maybe Gaia TV afterwards, and then and writing a book, and that was it."
Okay.
But yeah,
Uh, Time for one more question. I've got like 15 other questions at least that I want to ask, but I mentioned the archangels. So you had another visit. Not only did you meet your
yes,
11th dimensional family, but you also had
mhm.
the archangel show up in your living room, right?
Yeah, yeah. That was a big surprise because once again, I was in my living room, I was watching TV, and then all of a sudden this event happened when I could clearly, and that was during the day. So I could see I had a 17 high foot ceiling in my living room, and I basically had big long windows with like fur covers and everything else. It was very beautiful, beautiful room, and all of a sudden I could feel the energy change again, but a different way. This time I was lying down on the sofa and I was looking through to the window towards the windows, and I could see those silhouettes forming to the point of being um, physical human beings showing up with like long white hair, piercing blue eyes, almost like ice blue, and they were wearing like white robes, and one of them had a book in his hand, like a large book, and I was stunned. I didn't know what to do with it. And I remember being slightly scared, and I was on my sofa thinking, again, not logically, I was thinking, if I stay on my sofa and I don't really go anywhere, I'll be safe. That's
Unbelievable. And
that's what I
how did you
remember.
know? We're running low on time, but how did you know that they were archangels? Did they say, I am Archangel Michael, I am Archangel Raphael or
Yes,
Gabriel? Or,
not right away. So when I first saw them, they didn't speak to me. There was no communication whatsoever. I could see them lining up next to me, like next to the in front of me, like on the in front of the bay window. And then one of them walked towards me, and he was literally on the edge of the sofa, looking down at me. That's how close he was. So I could really see him very clearly. He had very like porcelain skin, uh, flawless. He was ageless to me. I couldn't even date say how old he was.
Hmm.
And he was holding this book, and it was open in his hands, and he was not communicating with me. He was just like holding it just in front of me, and I felt compelled to put my hands underneath the book. So I literally went up there, and that's when I blacked out.
Okay.
I literally blacked out, and I was in space. I was traveling through space with Michael. So Archangel Michael was the guy
Wow.
who basically led me and showed me source. He showed me the beginning of the universe. He showed me. I felt that intense energy, like loving energy, um, at source. I was there, and so this is where we all come from. And then from there, he was eager to show me the Palladian spaceship. After seeing like the Big Bang, like seeing all these planets formation through space and time, like I was going through the whole thing. And then I was going to the spaceship, and I could see the spacecraft from the outside at first, and I was going inside, and I could see the Pleiadians splicing the soul because it was all connected to my experience as a soul being. They were showing me that they were allowing those Pleiadians to splice the soul for knowledge, for
Hmm.
experience, and that
Okay.
was allowed in
Wow.
the laws of the universe, and they were sending out those souls to different beings on different planetary systems so they could learn from those beings. And I'm one of them as a human being today.
Hmm.
So I'm a fraction of the soul from this Pleiadian that lives on that spaceship. That Zoe is my star brother, my younger brother. I've learned the whole 9 yards. I've learned
Hmm.
everything from
Okay.
my star family. But they also told me, I said, those beings are no different than you. They are not your gods. They are pretty much the same as you. They are still learning as well. And so my views of aliens and everything else changed
Of
radically,
course.
completely after that experience, because it changed my perspective, which at the time was new, obviously, but I was able to have a much broader understanding of the universal experience.
Okay.
So my experiences with the ETs moving forward changed because I was no longer seeing them as superior than human beings and superior than me and trying to get a teaching from them. I was maybe sharing information, but it was on the same level. I
Okay.
was not feeling that I was talking to a god or anything else. And any of the other species that I've interacted with, to me, they were like, I understood where they came from because I could relate to them on
Okay.
a soul level.
Okay, Sebastien Martin. Wow, unbelievable story. And there's so much more. The name of the book is Inner Journey in Outer Space, and your website for everybody, Sebastien?
I don't have a website. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay. Okay, I'm sorry. What new show?
And Suho, yes, I
And
used
Suho.
to have I used to have a website, but
Okay.
that it's
Okay.
never been functional.
All
So
right. So the book
yeah.
is Inner Journey in Outer Space. Check out Cosmic Disclosure. Just Google Sebastien. You'll find out so much more about him. You've been amazing. I invite you back right now to be my guest on Guys Radio. There's so much more, so many questions I have, but thank you so much. Amazing,
Well,
amazing, amazing story.
thank you so much for having me, Robert. Thank you.
If you enjoy the guests and content I bring you each and every week to Guys TV and Guys Radio, please support us by subscribing to our channels and platforms. Thank you.